This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Military Broadcast Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Welcome to the From Pain to Purpose radio show. I'm your host, Theva Fulton. In this show, we explore the incredible journeys of resilience, healing, and transformation. In each episode, we will sit down with individuals who have faced unimaginable struggles and turned their pain into power, heartbreak into hope, and their challenges into meaningful change and finding new purpose in life. Through candid conversations and inspiring stories, we will uncover how pain, whether emotional, physical, mental, or spiritual, can be the catalyst for profound growth and a deeper sense of purpose. So if you are looking for motivation, insight, and real stories of triumph over adversity, you're in the right place. Let's get started on this journey from pain to purpose. Let's give veterans a voice through Military Broadcast Talk.
There we go. I guess it helps if I hit the right microphone button. I'm here in Texas. Always a little technical challenge, but I decided to switch microphones and go ahead and put the headset on and do this, so it's always a little challenge. It was a quick audible while the intro was playing, and I got to be the nerdy one and go look in the camera as I go make sure I have everything set so I can actually hear myself. Here we go. I think I have the whole headset thing set up right now. So sorry, everybody. I have my, if y'all can see, I have my Veteran Revivalist shirt on, and I even have QR codes on the back. Ta-da! So Daryl was just here. We pre-recorded for Monday. I'm back in Texas for the weekend. I have a doctor's appointment Monday morning and fly back to DC Monday afternoon. I know the weather hitting there this weekend is not supposed to be good. So I'm already getting alerts from the airline that weather may impact the travel back. We'll play that by ear. But that's just kind of how my life goes sometimes. Commuting back and forth sometimes. I do this all at my own dime. But I do have my house here in Texas. So it's nice coming back and sleeping in my own bed. My guest is not with us today. I'm not sure what happened to Elaine. I'll have to figure that out at another time and maybe bring her back on, when it works out better in her schedule. She, and maybe I'll just have to pre-record her as well. She runs a company. She is an entrepreneur. I was really looking forward to having her on the show. I'm sure it will happen, but it just didn't happen today, and that's okay. And I'm not saying this happened to her, but maybe even cold feet when we're dealing with difficult subjects. It is uncomfortable to have some of these kinds of conversations, but I don't think it's something that we should ignore either. And maybe that's where I can even be a little bit more vulnerable and talk about my From Pain to Purpose story. We talk about, before I jump into that, Elaine was going to talk about domestic violence and being in abusive relationships. And it is in the news quite a bit more. I think that there is the stigma, I think for sure, is on its way going out. But there's still this whole connection of how much is the victim, and part of this is even amplified in the Epstein files. Yes, I'm going to put in my 2 cents worth on the Epstein's file. I don't normally get into the political realm of things, but there is a From Pain to Purpose story in there. And so this is all completely inaudible. Sometimes as a podcaster that has live shows, you do have to call some audibles sometimes. And how do you still stay relevant and having some difficult conversations? What are our takeaways in a From Pain to Purpose reality side of things? Because that's what we're dealing with, reality on a day in and day out basis. How do we take these things that we hear about in the news and or the Bible, because there are implications in there. And I'm bringing that, how do we mold these things from a veteran perspective and make sense of it? And I don't know how many, even in the last few weeks, I've read several different veteran related news pages. And I want to say I'm giving liberation that these are news pages, because they are chronicling different trials that are happening. Court martials are what they're called. And I'm coming at this from a former JAG NCO in the Army, that I find it interesting to read these things, but I'm reading what what these court martials are representing. They are a lot of the same things that were happening when I was a paralegal. They are rape. They are, assault. They are murder. We are having the same types of trials, court martials today that we had when I was active duty. We are having the same types of incidences happening now that were happening when we were little, that were happening in the Bible. And maybe there's this part of me, in full transparency. Daryl and I just got through recording the Revivalist radio show for Monday. And God's still working with me on things that I can feel his presence. And even having this show right now, that he still is pressing upon me to have this discussion about domestic violence. And how do we, it's not normalized, right? We don't want to normalize domestic violence. We don't want to normalize sex trafficking, because I read something. I know I'm interrupting my own sentences. That is something that has been going on for ages, sex trafficking. These are some of the same behaviors that have been going on for so many years, so many ages, and I'll put it that way. It comes down to, how are we incorporating God into this? And I know from the Pain to Purpose story, I have this thread of God in my shows. I have people who want to or are willing to share their particular story. And typically most of them, I think for the most part, most of them are believers. But I don't always have people, people who I know are for sure believers. And that's because I am curious about other people's world views. I'm going to pivot and tell a story. I was working, I think, on my MBA at the time. It might have been my bachelor's degree. I remember I was living at a trailer park with my kids and my husband at the time over in Keller. Yes, I lived in a mobile home. Yes, I had zero income on my income tax, IRS. No, that's the Social Security level, where you have your recorded income. I think that's the right report. Social Security. Have zero income for a couple of years until I understood that I had education benefits available. So I went through voc rehab and I was attending Dallas Baptist University. You had to take 2 classes. One of them was the Old Testament. The second semester you take the Old Testament and the New Testament. And this whole worldview was something very new to me because I thought I only knew people who were Christian worldviews. I didn't even up to that point really understand what a different worldview was. And so the assignment was to go interview somebody with a different worldview. And I froze. And I told my professor, I don't know. And there was, trying to remember the name of the show. I mean, I know the name of the show that this was on, but there was a book that was being aired on a certain major show. It was an afternoon talk show, if that helps you figure out, from a very famous talk show host. And she had this group of book authors talking about this book called The Secret. And God was dealing with me, and I felt a certain amount of turmoil because I had not read the book. I come from a Bible, Bible reading side of things. But I didn't understand this whole different aspect of different worldviews. So The Secret really, man, that was some spiritual warfare. And that's important, and I'll tie it all together in the end, but that was something that gnawed at me, and just even the memory of that to me right even now was something that ate at me for the longest. Like it was like gnashing of teeth. It was my soul. I didn't sleep. It just was like, ugh. It was horrible stuff. It was not of God. I can clearly tell you that The Secret was not of God. And I'm very careful about the things that I read, the things that I expose myself to, and I have to pray. But there are sometimes people come into our lives and they kind of slither in. And things are not always what they seem. Even the people that we think that are innocent, and we develop this, relationship side of things are not always what they seem. The Slytherin, if you get what I mean by the Slytherin, that's a Harry Potter group of people, the Slytherin. So people slide into your life under the cover that everything's hunky-dory, that they have their, I'm going to use this, they have their shit together, but they really don't, because they know how to wear a mask. They know how to portray that they're there for you when they're really not. So on the full vulnerability side of things, I thought my first husband was like that, and I loved him. We were a Saudi couple. We fell in love during Desert Storm. I thought we did anyways. And I was all in, only to have found out over the years that he was not. And he had some issues. Eh, He had some issues from a variety of different. He had some issues. So he was carrying some baggage. And y'all will see on the show Monday. I'm going to use this as a rock, right? We're going to pretend like this candle lid is a rock. Maybe you could even use my eyeglass case, whatever works for you. I'm just holding things, pretend that these are rocks. People come into your life and they're carrying this bag of rocks, but you don't see the bag of rocks. They're carrying around these traumas, these things that have happened, childhood events, could be past relationships events, could be whatever. They got assaulted, was raped, whatever had happened. They carry around these rocks and they weigh them down, but they know how to learn how to put a mask on and pretend that everything's fine. My first husband was like that. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Sleeping with the Enemy. That was what I lived through my first marriage. Pretty close, not to such an extreme, but really, really close. And I don't even really talk to my kids about it. So my first husband, God rest his soul, he has passed away. My second ex-husband has passed away as well, 2014 and 2015. So I'm talking about two men that are not in my life anymore. Yes, these are men that were my children's fathers. But what I didn't understand about my first ex-husband is that he had I'm saying the word allegedly because I never saw anything in his military records to the contrary, that he served in Grenada. So he had a whole different set of issues that I didn't even know. Back then in the 90s, PTS was not on the discussion. I talked to his counselors once. He went to psychologist, I think it was, in the Killeen area way back when we were still married. And the best I got out of it was he was not dealing with, a full deck. He had, there were some marbles rumbling around in there. And that was the most that I had concrete outside of my own experience, because he did some very weird things. I don't necessarily need to go into it, but he did some very unique, weird things that I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to reconcile, right, as his wife. And the more he did these things, the more my soul recognized, kind of like what I was referring to with The Secret. My soul recognized that this doesn't compute with me. And it ended, our marriage ended with him assaulting me the day after my birthday. I had to call the police and I had to turn. So remember, I worked in the JAG office. That's kind of where I'm going back even with that. Uh, that I had to work with my supervisor was a JAG attorney who came to my house and helped me change the locks on my door, that helped me to file the restraining order, who helped me then work with my command that I got on orders and finish the divorce. I got on orders and went to Germany with my two oldest boys. That was I have to breathe. I have to breathe. I have not talked publicly about this. Um, and that was a, he got riffed as a specialist. That was even something that was not really even talked about. So he had some clear issues, but I didn't know how to deal with him as his wife. He did not participate with me as a spouse. I went through a number of birth problems with both the first and the second son, um, alone. I went through being evac by helicopter from Fort Hood to Fort Sam Houston twice by myself. I was pregnant. Almost lost my second son, and went through this journey of antepartum by myself. And then so when he assaulted me the day after my birthday, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, that I had finally recognized that I was I was abused. That was marital abuse. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that one of our former um, one of our brothers who served with us in Desert Storm, actually in our same unit, he knew that my first ex-husband was actually planning on not relocating to Fort Hood with me. He it would have been me and our oldest son. He was actually contemplating just staying in Georgia. Um, and maybe woulda, coulda, shoulda, maybe that might have been the better option, but then I wouldn't have had Joshua either. And that was a whole journey. You don't really think about how domestic violence affects you. The hard part being when that happens when you're active duty is, do you have a command that is supporting you versus a command that's not? Because I can tell you that the sergeant major that I had at the time, who was JAG, was not supportive. Not supportive. And this was a guy who was supposed to be a Mennonite. So I'm not naming him. I'm just saying this guy was a Mennonite. I'm sorry I laugh at that because we've been saying on we've been saying on the Revivalist show, even on reading in Genesis, stay away from the ites. And here I just had this connection reading this guy. He was a Mennonite and he didn't want to support me. Yeah. So those ites. God's humorous sometimes. Sometimes you make the connection live. Sorry, folks. Not laughing about the situation, just the connection that, stay away from the ites. But this man was a Mennonite. And he was not supportive of my getting divorced. Not that it was his choice, not that he had any influence, but I remember him clearly articulating. And strangely enough, yes, this was a man, this sergeant major drove all the way down to Fort Sam Houston. I was pregnant. I had spent 6 weeks down at Fort Sam Houston pregnant. I only saw my husband once. Is it once? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was once, maybe twice, but only once. During that whole 6 weeks of antepartum in the hospital at the old Fort Sam Houston, where I was stuck in a patient room, with 2 other women. 3 of us, we had pregnancy problems. I had a marginal placenta previa, and so I had this spontaneous bleeding, and they were trying to control the bleeding, so that I wouldn't go into early term labor. So, and I think I ended up developing preeclampsia at the time too, but it was marginal placenta previa. So so I spent 6 weeks there, 6 weeks convalescent leave, trying to not have a baby. And Joshua still ended up being born 6 weeks early. So he's 5 pounds, 6 ounces. And I did almost all of that by myself. My unit actually, other people in the JAG office helped move us because we were buying a house. Here it was in the hospital buying us a family home in Killeen, that I was having to do all this paperwork and everything out of the hospital bed, in the hospital bed, buying a home, couldn't pack anything. My JAG office, the office that I worked in, helped move us because my husband at the time didn't even help us pack. He had checked out. I don't know where he was mentally. Physically, he was there. We you know, I don't know where he was mentally, but I bought a house and my unit helped me move. And then I was pregnant, supposed to be on bed rest, and I was hanging mini blinds so that people couldn't see into our house because that side of the house faced the wall, the street right there. And I ended up getting hospitalized once, or I think once more. And he brought our oldest son into the hospital while he went to work. The dog had more precedence, and I was in the hospital by myself with my son for at least like 8 hours while he went to work. Um, you know, domestic violence comes in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, folks. And it's how we process it. I went to Germany very scared, very alone, not having family support. Fortunately, I developed good relationships. Oops, there's one of my dogs. Uh, Fortunately, in Germany, I developed some really good relationships with my coworkers and had a good support network there. But I stayed very anxious, high alert for a long time. I had to learn how to develop. There's two dogs here now. They're happy to see me. So, it's but I had to learn how to do some other things in life. I went bowling Friday nights to have some Eva time. I joined a I really stretched myself and joined the community softball team. And I did not grow up in high school playing softball, though I played catcher. I did what I could. I took the boys on trips in the community softball league, and we went hiking. I look back now, man, I was a hiker then too, because I would put Joshua in the backpack and Jordan, we would walk, and we went looked at castles and did all kinds of things. I took them all over the place. I just enjoyed getting out there and staying around. There, you want to see the dogs? There we go. Wiggles, wiggles. So I had to learn how to reinvent myself and find out what Eva liked. This was even, active duty. Was counseling available? I was still recovering from the car wreck accident that had happened when I, was active duty on my birthday, March 20th, 1992. So that's where I had an MP had teed my car going 55 to 65 miles an hour. I have gotten better about not talking about it. Used to get really, really anxious leading into my birthday, which happens next month. I I bring all of this up because there are things, and I will talk about on the show Monday, but I made up this term before the revivalist show that Daryl and I recorded a while ago. He's already left. Called snowballing, the snowball effect of our traumas. So, we have all this trauma that I had in numerous instances with my first ex-husband, and then walks in my second ex-husband, who has, like I said, already passed away himself. He had a whole different set of issues, and he was actually an alcoholic. Mark Mark was an alcoholic. Rick was not an alcoholic. Actually, Rick didn't ever. I don't think I ever saw him consume any kind of alcohol at all. So I'll say that for him, he didn't partake in any of those things. So just know that even from the domestic violence side of things, it is not always attributable to alcohol. And I wouldn't even consider that Rick was a narcissist or anything. He had some other different issues, and I'm going to call it maybe the unlabeled or undiagnosed PTS symptoms. If he had actually, because like I said, I never saw it documented that he actually participated in Grenada. All I can know is what he told me he did, that he said he left, and he was the 31 Charlie at the time, which was Camo. And he had Jumpmaster, you know, uh, you know, patch. So I don't doubt that he actually did what he did, but it's just not documented anywhere. I can only report on what he had told me when he was alive. But he had clearly had changed him, and I didn't know how to compute that stuff. So I go into Germany as a single mother. I'm doing me, I'm doing us, and trying to steal heal from my car wreck. This wasn't that much. It was 7 years later. So no, 5 years later. It happened 92. We get there in 97. So 5 years later, the bones healed, but that's when all the soft tissue issues started to happen. And having issues with doing PT tests were not as easy as they were before. But I was having, I think, probably some of the Gulf War issues pop in that we were told didn't exist. And then in walks Mark into my life. But then what I didn't understand also, as time evolved, that he became an alcoholic, and he was a former drug addict, and that's a whole different story. And because he had some issues there, but that was before we were together. But as time went on, and there was an incident when I was pregnant with my daughter Carrie, that there was a physical altercation in our home. I didn't call the cops. I think there was this very, I want to say, Catholic side of me. This isn't I was in denial. That's really what it was. I was in denial that I was a domestic victim, not once now, but twice. And that's important to recognize, because as a paralegal, I saw case after case after case, court martial after court martial, or Article 15, where I was helping prosecute the very things that now I was actually becoming the victim of after the military, only in denial that I was being a victim. That was hard to sit with when I was getting divorced after some more incidences, and I have a very beautiful people garden of people who poured into me, who kept me sane. And even though I was, and I, if it had not been for my faith, I would have been broken a long time ago. Broken. And I have, in fact, and said in the past that I felt broken. That doesn't mean that we don't get mended back. Because there's that analogy where, and I get the goosebumps, guys, that, there was the clay pot that got broken, and somebody took the glue and glued all the pieces back together. Well, but then if that's what's God's doing it, and now it holds together better than what it was before, and He's reformed us, I have this joy and this comfort in knowing that He's helped make me whole out of this, and I've gone through this, fire. I've gone through the storm, because this helps me tell my pain to purpose story that I have been holding on to. And I'm going to it's one of my older books. This is the first edition. This is the first edition. It's the first one. This is the first edition of Welcome, the original version of Welcome to My People Garden. And it took me 10 years to write this. It took me 10 years of healing between those two marriages and ultimate divorces to be able to get through things and to give that pain to God, because I felt it physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Remember, it's the 4 pillars of my chair: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And when you have one of those legs start teetering and, out of the course of both of those marriages and ultimate divorces, excuse me, I certainly felt those legs teeter and get tested. And God worked with me, God purified me. And that's why I really, the old version of me was happy to try and hurry up and get into a relationship because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I've been very transparent about this, that, I haven't had sex since 2018. I'm not in a rush to have sex. I'm not in a rush to get in a relationship for the sake of having a relationship, because there's more to me. There's more to what God needs me to be to help other people. Sorry, the dogs are barking. Not sure why they're barking. But God's worked with me. And I'm here to tell the story. I'm here to help you through. I tell enough, like I said, I tell enough about my story using the parable of the sower that you can plug and play your own trials, your own traumas, your own whatever it is that you need to learn how to drop the rock on and get through life. Because we don't have to keep being a victim of domestic violence unless we're choosing to want to continue being. And at some point, you're going to have to say, I'm ready to put the rock down. I'm through with that. I don't want it in my people garden. I'm ready to get rid of it because I don't want to own that rock. I don't want you to own that domestic violence rock, because I'm telling you, it hurts. Domestic violence hurts. And if we don't help each other, and this is not something that only happens to women, it happens to men too. I've helped people. I've helped men who are going through and have been going through domestic violence, and they haven't learned how to put the rock down. And it's a choice. You can't put the rock down. We can't let it go. We don't have to keep holding it on. God doesn't want us to hold on to it. I don't care whether it's PTS. I don't care whether it's, whatever sexual trauma, MST that you've gone, anything else any other traumas that you've picked up in the military, or whether you're a civilian and you've not gone through some of these experiences, war, whatever. It's a choice to hold on to the rock, whatever you label it, and it's a choice to put it down. I hope that makes sense, because I don't know how to be more transparent. And God has given me this incredible people garden that helps me keep my shit together, because I'm not always pretty put together. This doesn't happen magically. And it's God. Right? It's God that helps me get through. It is God that keeps my cup full, because Eva doesn't do it by herself. I don't do this by myself. I'm not a podcast host by myself, because God gives me the strength to do this. Because there's a big part of me that if I let it take hold, if I let Satan take hold, he would have me shrink. He would keep me small. But my God's bigger. You hear me? My God's bigger. Your God's bigger. He's going to keep us whole. He's going to keep that cup full. But you have to give it the faith to him to let him help us stay full. And I'm not even watching time. I'm just rambling. We can all agree, I think, surely, that domestic violence is something that has existed probably for years, eons. And while, you know, Daryl and I have only been reading through Genesis so far, it's been silent on domestic violence. But I think, even as it's hitting me right now, thinking about Noah having his vulnerability, the flaws in his character, that he had been, he was drunken and naked on the in his tent, and he was found. What else is about the story that is not being told, right? Because we don't know that. The 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 verses are silent on that. The women in the story are silent in that period too. But I think as we even make that connection back to the things we see happening in society, and even in the context about the Epstein files, uh this dichotomy about the victims' names and them coming forward, versus what happens with the guys and the prosecutions. There's some reconciling that's happening in society. And I think in some ways we have to think about that. That so another part of me, before I went active duty, a month before, wasn't even a month, no, because we went skiing in January and I left for basic training at the beginning of February. I went skiing with some high school or college friends actually in New Mexico before I went to basic training. So it was about 2 weeks before I went to basic training. I was raped. Uh, I was raped by a stranger. Was there with my friends on this ski trip in New Mexico, and I wasn't originally going to talk about this, but it's another form of violence against women, right? That I went to basic training, uh, and did sit-ups to the stars. That's how I worked through what happened to me in New Mexico. But I knew then, and I talk about it a little bit in my documentary, that vulnerability, coming out, to help tell the story, that I knew that if I had tried to file a police report, knowing that I was on orders to go active duty for basic training in February, that that would have changed, my going. And I had to take care of me and do what I knew I was on task to do and go to basic. So I didn't file the police report. But more also because I knew I had drank. I didn't do any drugs or anything, but I drank. That the trial would have been about what my behavior was doing and committing, and how they were going to turn that against me. I understood that clearly. That was 1988. That society saw things as a way of blaming me, the woman, and I think in some ways I'm still seeing that in the media. That whether it's the sex trafficking, she asked for it. Whether it's the domestic violence, she asked for it. Whether it's whatever we want to, the rapes, we want to say she asked for it. No, this goes back to excusing the man's behavior who acted poorly in and of themselves. And I'm not saying I don't own my own behavior either, or as a woman, whoever you are, we still own our behavior. But we can't excuse man's behavior. And how does this tie back even into the military? It's command and discipline. We each having command and discipline of ourselves and of our minds, of our bodies, and using it in the way is beneficial to God. Are we making choices on a daily basis and protecting our bodies from that physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual pain? We don't have to keep enduring these kinds of pains. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a choice, but we can make better choices to help prevent it. And we have to work together. We have to know that if I can get through it, you can get through it. And don't give up. I don't care if you're male or female. And this goes into why it's important to have peer mentors and not always, leaning into what some psychologist says. Because here's the other trend that I've been listening to from people who are even going to uh, doctors who are or clinicians who are supposed to be helping us, is that they're telling people to self-isolate, don't fall in love, don't get in relationships, tell people that you're emotionally unavailable. It's a lie. People, it's a lie to shut your heart off. God wants us to have loving relationships. He wants us to be able to enjoy the joys of love, just agape love. But to say that you can't you are emotionally unavailable is cutting you off from the very thing that can actually heal you. 1 Corinthians 13:13, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. If you look at any tools and you're from pain to purpose, people gardening, tool chest, love is the answer. Love. I love you guys. I'm not here because Eva wants to have a voice and just tell all of her secrets, because I could keep them quiet forever. I have up until now. But people, you need to know that you don't go through these things and think that you're only the only person going through them. You're not. You're not. You're not the first and you're not the last one to go through these things. I'm just saying that there's an answer, that from your pain, you can find purpose to help somebody else. And that even gets into talking people out of suicides. I've talked, I don't know how many people out of suicides, and I will keep doing it until I am no more. I'll keep doing it until I am no more. But in the meantime, God gave me this cup full and my love overfloweth, and I have it to share, and I need to help more of you let your cup overflow so we can share with other people, so we can all be bountiful. That's what he wants. That's what God wants. That's our from pain to purpose story. He wants us to grow. He wants us to be bountiful. He wants the love, and it's a choice. Domestic violence isn't the answer. It's a reaction. It's a consequence. Faith is the one thing that has held me together. Seriously. Because he feeds me. He keeps me full. He keeps me energized. Because it's this relationship here that works, so that this relationship with you guys work, whoever I come across. I wasn't expecting to tell my story today like this, and it probably would have been a far different conversation with Elaine on I don't know. I don't think we really talk about domestic violence in a vulnerable way. I didn't seek out a lot of the other legal sources that I probably could have sought out. because that's not me. Uh, you, you know, what are the I have in my book, which is the QR code up in the upper left. If you want to purchase it, I do give half of my. I owe the MBR $10. That's how much I've had in sales so far. But you know, I've offered half of my proceeds, the profit, to go to MBR to support my show, because I do believe in giving veterans a voice and helping other veterans heal. Um, it's difficult to be honest with ourselves, you know, to take the mask. I keep showing this because this is important. This is an actual mask. I do have it here in the house somewhere. This is a mask I did. It's Mod Podge, and I'm gonna get it closer. So I'm telling my story. The red, white, and blue eyes are because I'm a veteran. I live in the state of Texas. You can see this is, you know, the ribbon is in loosely the shape of Texas. Their different colors of the mask are we are all perfectly imperfect. So you can see Mod Podge, that these are all different pieces of paper that are glued on there, and they're imperfect, right? So it makes this mask is we are perfectly imperfect, but we are made in his image. That's what the mask itself represents on the cover of my book. We are made in his image. And then the flowers are representing that we are supposed to go forth and be bountiful. So I have, and then the grass, that was actually, I took the photograph in my front yard at the time, to, you know, for us to, you know, really represent the growth, right? Green represents growth. So I wanted that piece that's there. So we are supposed to go out there and, you know, all be these beautiful flowers in the people garden. Because otherwise, another talk show could be about about how relationships are very transactional. You know, I grow a special people garden, and that you know, we're about saving lives one at a time. I feel very blessed. I in this journey, I meet lots of people from all different walks of life, black, brown, you know, whatever, gay, lesbian. I have a wide people garden. And that's just the way life actually has always been. It's just always been very, dogs are barking again, sorry. It's all been very varied in life. So I'm okay with that. I didn't do a new I'm gonna go ahead and transition. I did not update my slide to show all my upcoming guests. Hopefully, I can find an old one real fast from last week. We'll see, because brought I brought my laptop, and I don't know what's downloaded. Oh, I guess I could open up Canva real fast and re-download and talk about my upcoming guests. We'll see if it'll log in right. We'll see. Oh, finger. Let's see if it goes to the right thing. Nope, wrong account. Well, I don't think I have it. I do have a whole slew of guests coming up. I wish I could find the file. Sorry, guys. It's what happens when you go from airing one thing to airing the other thing, and didn't uh didn't get to fully prep because I flew in late last night, folks. So it I'm still trying to catch up on, you know, sleep and everything. All right. It's not there. I have a whole list of folks upcoming. Maybe it'll be in my phone. Let's see. Here we go. I can do it from here. So Steve Morgan, shout out to Steve, is joining me next Saturday. He has a nonprofit. Julie Austin is the following week. Julie is the host of Dog Tags to Ownership. And so she's got a quite interesting story. I was on her podcast a couple of months ago. March 14th. Why am I brain cramping on his name? I told you I didn't update my slides, so I'm having to cheat on this and go back to where I was. Nope, Instagram. I met this guy through Instagram is where we've been messaging. And it's John Davis. See, John Davis is going to talk about expat. Are y'all following the whole expat thing? That's a pretty big topic for a lot of people. No show on the 21st. I might call an audible. My friend Lisa and I were going to be at Fort Bragg on the 20th for a military women's conference. So I don't know, maybe I can get Lisa to talk with me on Saturday, the 21st. We'll see. And then I have Paula Yost, who is an author. She's an attorney, and if you've got children, you need to learn how to advocate for the health care of your kids. She has some other topics that she can talk about as well. Is joining us on the 28th of March. And I'm booking in April. And I'm going to be so busy. At some point, Jose and I, Jose's show is coming up next. Jose and I are going to talk about something we're both doing exciting together at the beginning of July. It's an event. It's an adult camp. Who knew that happened? Who knew that these things were out there? It'll be great. We did it last summer. I was an instructor and he was a local, kind of part-time volunteer attendee, but we're going to be putting on the class a week long for that. So more to follow with it and some guests. That will be exciting. I think I'm already booking events, gosh, this year is going to be epic. Working on, of course, my PhD. I already got the feedback from chapter 3. I got a few things to tweak and I can resubmit it. Because that was not official. So I can now submit it in the doctoral record probably tomorrow after I do the fixes and then upload chapters 1 through 3. Woo-hoo, I'm so excited. So things are progressing. I'm really excited how things are going in life. I've had a really good week. Please pray for me on my doctor's appointment Monday morning. So, it's life is lifing, right? Life is lifing, and we just get through it all together. So anyways, thank you, MBR, for giving veterans a voice. Thank you all for joining the For Pain to Purpose radio show, and y'all have a very blessed week. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.